What's up everyone, Steve here, aka your Nerd Tech. Now, I have a receptacle in the wall that's next to me. It powers my computer, my monitors, and a couple accessories that I have on the dresser here next to me. And it's starting to go bad. It sparked at me yesterday, and it is, if I slightly touch the power brick that's connected to it, it shuts everything off, and that's not good for the component. So I'm gonna go ahead and change that. And hopefully in this video, I can teach you how to change it so you don't have to call an electrician next time and save quite a bit of money. So let's go ahead and get this replaced. Alright, so before we can take this panel off and start playing around with it, we should make sure the power is cut off to it because you don't want to get a nasty shock. So go ahead and take our tester here, and as you can see, clearly we still have power to it. So what we're going to do is take our one tool. This is going to help us find the breaker that controls this outlet. So what we're going to do, go ahead and plug this in. And what that's doing is it's sending a signal over to the breaker box, and then we'll take this part and we'll figure out which breaker it's connected to. So let's go find that breaker. Alright, so here we have my breaker box, and now I have the other piece of the tool here. Go ahead and turn it on. Now all you're going to do is take the front end here and just run it across the breakers. It's got a green arrow on the front here, and it'll tell you when you find the breaker. Now this isn't always 100% accurate, but it beats yelling across the house if I asked if I flipped the right breaker. It's a nice little tool to have, and it's not very expensive. I'll have a link down in the description below. Alright, so I think I found the right breaker. Let's go make sure. Alright, so it does appear that I have flipped the right breaker. The light is no longer on, but you still always want to check it with your tester, just in case this thing may have failed. Go ahead and pull that out. And it's not beeping and turning red, so it looks like I got the right one. First thing we're going to do is take off this faceplate. It's got a flathead screw. I'm going to go ahead and use my 5-in-1 screwdriver from Klein Tools, a flathead. And then once again, I'm going to do a final check for any electric running in here, just in case there's a wire coming from somewhere else that's inside of here that could get me. I did find out the hard way that being electrocuted sucks, so let's just double check. And it doesn't appear so. And what's nice about this tool as well, there are cheaper ones that you actually have to make contact with the wire. This one, as long as you get close to anything that's hot, it'll beep. That's something you should look into. I'll also have a link down in the description below for this tool. Now, to get the receptacle out, I have two fairly long flathead screws, top and the bottom. They make these things a mile long. I don't know why. See, a bonus to knowing how to take these things out is when you gotta paint, you can just take these things out and you don't get paint all over them or in them, which ruins it. Alright, so I got the screws out. You can go ahead and grab the top here, pull the wires as straight as possible. Now, the electrician was good when he ran this outlet. He left at least 6 inches of wire out, which just makes it easy to work on it, just in case if you do have to replace this. Because even sometimes you have to cut the wire. In my case, I'm going to have to, because in the older days, they use these quick inserts, which you just pop the wire in. I believe newer outlets still have that, but I don't recommend it. I'm going to show you a different way you can do to hook up the wires. Be a lot safer. Alright, just to go over the layout some, I have 5 wires. Sometimes you may just have 3. So what we're looking at here is we have 2 black wires, which are hot wires. Now the reason we have 2, we have one coming in feeding the outlet, and then we have another one leading out going somewhere else in the circuit. We have 2 white wires, which is the common wires. One's coming in, and then the other one's going out somewhere else in the circuit. And then we have our ground wire, which is it has no installation on it. It's just a bare copper wire with the green screw. And then so you know if you wire these up right, hot wires go on the gold screws, and then the white common wires go on silver screws. You want to make sure you get those right. Now because they didn't use the screws the way I'm going to show you, and they used the quick inserts, we're going to have to cut these. So go ahead, take your snips. Alright, now when you snip these wires, you do want to remember which ones were on the bottom, the pair, the black and the white, and then which ones were on the top. It doesn't matter which way you put them on the receptacle, but you do want to make sure that you put the proper black with the proper white. You don't want to get them flip-flopped. If you don't remember when you snip the wires off the back of the receptacle, you can look inside the box and you can see the actual, the other installation from the wire, and you can see where they're coming from. But you do want to make sure you get that right. Before we go and hook this up, I want to go over the receptacle a little bit. So here's your basic home receptacle. The only times they get a little bit different than this is 1, if you're not in the US, or 2, you have a 220 outlet, but that's a whole different thing. The way they have it hooked up is they have it in these quick connects. Like I said, you can use that if you trust it. Me personally, I've seen them pop out, catch your house on fire, or just burn up your wall pretty good. So I don't trust those. The way that actually my dad taught me how is to make pigtails, and then you hook them around the screw and then tighten the screw down. It's a much more secure connection. I do believe you'll see quite a bit of electricians actually do it that way instead of these. I really kind of wish that the companies would just stop putting those. But we have our gold for hot, silver for common, and then our green for ground. Let me go ahead and show you how to hook these up. Alright, so to get the wires prepped to go back on the new receptacle, I believe in the older days they used 12 gauge wire. Nowadays they use 14 gauge wire. So if you need new wire for your house, a lot of times when you go to the hardware stores such as like Home Depot or Lowe's, you'll look for 14-2 wire. Unless you're putting in a 3-way switch, then you need 14-3. Now 14-2 still has 3 wires, but they only count the ones that go through the electrical run through. You would have your 1 black and your 1 white. They don't count the ground in the wire count. But for this one, I got my wire strippers here, and they are labeled for the gauges. So I'm going to go ahead and use the 12 gauge slot. To really gauge on how much you need to strip off the installation, it varies. Once you do it with more practice, you'll kind of just get the hang of how far you need to go with it. For me, I probably inch the most, half an inch, probably more like a half an inch. And that's it. And that's 1 wire stripped. Go ahead and do the other 3. Alright, so there's a couple ways that you can make the pigtails on the ends of these wires. One, you can take your wire strippers. Most wire strippers have these. And you see these little holes right here? That's to make the pigtails. So what you would do, you would take the wire, and you stick it in the hole, and then just turn the handles, and you get a nice little pigtail there. The other way you can do it, you can take your standard pliers here. You grab about where you want the center, put the ends at about the center of the wire, and then just bend. And you get a nice little pigtail. Alright, so now that you have all your pigtails made, the way you want them to go is when you tighten the screw. So for these gold screws, they're going to be turning that way. you're going to want your pigtail to wrap around in that direction. So when you tighten the screw, it's going to cinch that pigtail down, and you're guaranteed for it to not slip out. If you were to do it the other way and then you cinch the screw down, you would actually undo the pigtail and it'd be a lot looser connection. So I have my pigtails already dressed the way they're supposed to be. With these older wires, two things. One, or any wire, when you get a bigger gauge, it's pretty sharp, and I've cut myself quite a few times messing with it. Also, they can be kind of hard to work with just your hands, especially if you got to turn them over. Sometimes you can have a hard time just depending on how strong you are. So what I always like to do, just to make it easier on myself and to worry about getting hurt, is take your pliers, grab it, and then you can just spin it around that way, and it makes it a lot easier. So if you're not very strong, or if it's just being very stubborn, you can do it that way. You want to undo all the screws, not take them out, but pull them out or unscrew them as far as they can go, which I've done already. Just makes it a little bit easier getting that pigtail in there. The first wire I always like to do first is just the ground wire. It's a little bit easier. You go ahead and you wrap your pigtail on there. Now there's a tab on there, and what that is for is to help you cinch it up. And if for some reason you're having a hard time with that tab, you can take your electric pliers and you can cinch it up that way. Even though the screw is going to cinch it down, it always helps to pinch that shut. Go ahead and tighten that screw down, and that's one wire done. We'll go ahead and we'll do the white wires next. Same story with these screws. They have a tab on them as well, but I normally just use my pliers and pinch it. Little trick too, sometimes it can be a pain, that wire will bump off that screw. So I always like take my thumb, pull the wire down, just helps it sit easier. So when you tighten the screw, you're getting a guaranteed connection. Now, like I said before, you want to make sure that the two wires are together, they're paired up. So I'm just going to confirm that this black wire runs with the bottom white wire, which it does. So we'll go ahead and put this one on. And now we're about halfway done installing this new receptacle. Alright, so now that we got the wires all connected, we're going to double check, make sure everything's good. Which everything appears to be. So the best way to get these wires back in there, they can be a pain in the neck to bend them back up so that the receptacle sits back in there. So you do got to be a little forceful with it. But now that that's in there, and actually, like I said before, saying I wish that they put up the Phillips. Well, I kind of spoke too soon. The new ones actually do have Phillips screws. My bad. We'll go ahead, halfway cinch the bottom one down. Then we will move to the top. Now actually on the top you can actually go ahead and go all the way down, since the bottom one's halfway done. Reason you do that is if you use to cinch the bottom one all the way down or the top before you do the other, it's going to sit very crooked, and putting the other screw in is going to be almost impossible, and you can also break the box doing that. So halfway on one, then all the way on the other one, then do the rest on the other one. Alright, so I'm pretty picky when it comes to putting these in. I want to make sure that they're straight up and down so it looks good and it's not flipped up that way, which mine's looking pretty good. Make sure they're tight, and they are. So now that I got that installed, we can go ahead and put a new faceplate on. Now you don't have to put a new faceplate on. I'm going to, because the old one is yellow and it has paint on it, Base plates are cheap. Depending on where you get it, they're under $1. Just about anywhere you get it nowadays, it's under $1. So I have my new faceplate with my screw, and of course they don't make these Phillips, so we gotta go back to our flathead. I love the screwdriver, guys. If you do a lot of electrical work, this is the screwdriver to get. They also make a 12-in-1, but I believe it's a little overkill. I don't need all that. I've done quite a bit of electrical work around houses, and this thing's all I've ever needed. All right, now be careful when you tighten the screw down because it will go farther than it needs to, and then you're gonna crack this centerpiece. I've done it a lot of times. But something I noticed here is I did cinch the bottom of the receptacle a little too much, and there's a gap here, and I don't like the way that looks. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this back out, and I'm gonna back that screw out just a little bit so this comes out a little bit more. And that looks good to me. That gap filled in pretty good. That's a job well done. Now let's go flip the power on and make sure it works. Maybe I spoke too soon. Oops. All right, so the lights in my room came back on. Went ahead and just went and flipped the breaker on. Figured I didn't have to show you that part. And I don't have smoke coming out yet. That's a fantastic sign. Now I just gotta figure out what I do with my tester. Aha. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take the tester and try it out. You could just plug something in, but in case you mess this up and you plug something in, it could ruin whatever you plugged in. So I'd rather just ruin this tool because it's cheap and I'm pretty sure it won't ruin it. Right side is the hot side. We got power there. And we have power there. Just to be sure everything works, because you could get the commons wrong. Now they do make a tool that you could plug into this outlet and it will tell you if everything's 100% or if you got some of the wires backwards or whatnot. A tool can tell you that. I think it goes for like 12 bucks. I just don't have one, but it would be a nice little thing to have. But I'm gonna go ahead and take my switch here, plug it in, see if I get power. And I do. So I'm gonna say that's a good job. And it looks a little better. All right, so as you just seen, it's not very hard to change out your own receptacles. There's no need to call an electrician if you do know how to do it. I do really push that you buy one of these tools right here. This right here can actually save your life. If you get struck by that electric, it can hurt pretty damn well, and it might even kill you. So one of these tools, 12 bucks, I think you can buy one of these. I urge you to go buy one if you're gonna do any electric work. Now also, you don't have to wait for the receptacle to go bad. My recommendation is to go ahead and change it. If you know the receptacle is old, change it for two reasons. One, it's a lot more efficient, and the chances of it going bad and burning the house down goes down tremendously. Also, it just puts a new look to the room. You wouldn't think that that makes a big difference, but I assure you, go change one that looks bad and it makes all the difference in the world. And as you can see, this one, it's the really old yellow ones and it's got paint all over it. That looks like crap. So I'll go ahead and change that. I really hoped you enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could please give it a thumbs up, that really does help out a lot. All right, everyone, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next week.